the Persian Gulf, and the Philippine Sea. 2:33 a.m., Wednesday. The coordination had taken 4 months, not 4 months of planning. Both militaries had maintained independent strike packages against U.S. forces for years. 4 months of synchronization, aligning timelines, establishing a shared communications protocol that operated through a civilian satellite relay in a third country, and solving the operational security problem that any direct communication between IRGC Aerospace Force Headquarters in Tehran and PLA Rocket Force Headquarters in Beijing represented. The solution had been indirect, a shared planning cell, never meeting in person, operating through encrypted messages on a commercial platform, managed by officers who officially did not know each other's names. The cell had solved one problem that neither military could solve alone: the force distribution problem. The United States maintained 2 primary carrier strike groups in the Indo-Pacific area of operations. When both were present and positioned, they created overlapping defensive architectures that made saturation operations against either one individually significantly more difficult. The solution the Joint Planning Cell had developed was geometric. Force both carrier groups to fight simultaneously in different theaters, preventing either group from contributing its defensive magazine capacity to the other's engagement. Split the network. Exhaust both magazines in parallel. The plan required precise time coordination, both operations launching within a window narrow enough that neither carrier group could disengage from its own defensive engagement to reinforce the other. The window the planning cell had identified: 90 seconds. Operation Shuangjian, Dual Blade, called for the PLA Rocket Force to launch its Taiwan Strait Preparatory Strike Package in the Philippine Sea simultaneously with the IRGC's Gulf-focused mass launch against U.S. bases and the carrier strike group in the Persian Gulf. Not sequentially, not within hours of each other, within 90 seconds. The PLA's contribution: 37 DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missiles against the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group operating 290 miles east of Luzon, and 19 DF-26B missiles against Andersen Air Force Base on Guam. The IRGC's contribution: 61 Ahmad and Shahab-3 ballistic missiles against Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and Al Dhafra in the UAE, 44 Fateh 313 missiles against U.S. facilities in Kuwait and northern Saudi Arabia, and 31 Hoveyzeh cruise missiles against the USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group operating in the northern Arabian Sea. 192 weapons across 2 theaters separated by 6,800 miles. 90-second coordination window. The coordination had one operational flaw that the Joint Planning Cell had not fully solved. The communication link between the 2 commands depended on a satellite relay that U.S. Signals Intelligence had been monitoring for 11 weeks. Not the content of the messages. The encryption was robust, but the traffic pattern. The volume of encrypted traffic between 2 nodes that had been previously assessed as low activity had increased by 340% over 4 months. The traffic pattern analysis had been flagged at the Defense Intelligence Agency in a classified assessment transmitted to CENTCOM and INDOPACOM 6 weeks earlier. The assessment had not predicted the specific operation. It had predicted that a coordinated multi-theater operation was being planned and had recommended elevated alert posture in both theaters. The recommendation had been implemented. Both carrier groups had been at elevated readiness for 6 weeks. At 2:33 a.m., the PLA Rocket Force launched from positions in Fujian and Guangdong provinces. 37 DF-21D anti-ship ballistic missiles in a 44-second window, followed 9 seconds later by 19 DF-26B launches targeting Guam. Total PLA launch time: 53 seconds. At 2:34 a.m., 61 seconds after the first DF-21D left its launcher, the IRGC Aerospace Force began its launch sequence from Kermanshah, Khuzestan, and Fars provinces. 61 Imad and Shahab 3 missiles in a 68-second window. 44 Fateh 313 launches beginning at 2:35 a.m. 31 Hoveyzeh cruise missiles from coastal positions beginning at 2:35 a.m. Total IRGC launch time 112 seconds. The 90-second coordination window had been achieved. At 2:35 a.m., 192 weapons were in the air across 2 theaters simultaneously. The space-based infrared system detected the first DF-21D launches at 2:33 a.m. Alert transmitted to Indopacom and the Roosevelt Flag Bridge simultaneously. The SBIR's satellite covering the Persian Gulf and Arabian Peninsula detected the first EMAD launches at 2:34 a.m. Alert transmitted to CENTCOM and the Truman Flag Bridge simultaneously. By 2:35 a.m., the Indopacom and CENTCOM command centers were receiving parallel mass launch alerts from opposite sides of the planet. Both pre-authorized response protocols activated simultaneously at 2:35 a.m. Iron Pacific for the Philippine Sea Theater, Iron Gulf for the Arabian Sea, and Persian Gulf Theater. Both protocols had been written to operate independently. Neither had been designed to operate simultaneously with the other. The interaction between them, specifically the question of whether any assets could be redirected between theaters given the launch timelines, was resolved by physics. The theaters were 800 miles apart. Nothing in either theater's available arsenal could cross that distance in time to affect the other theater's engagement. Both theaters would fight their own battles. The plan had worked as designed. In the Philippine Sea, the Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group's defensive response began at 2:36 a.m. The Cooperative Engagement Capability Network had distributed all 37 DF-21D tracks and 19 DF-26B tracks across every Aegis-capable vessel in the group within 40 seconds of first detection. The Roosevelt's escort screen, a Ticonderoga cruiser, and 3 Arleigh Burke destroyers began SM-3 Block 2A launches at 2:38 a.m. The DF-21D is the PLA's premier anti-ship ballistic missile. Its terminal guidance designed to track a maneuvering carrier through a combination of space-based reconnaissance and over-the-horizon radar cueing. Its terminal maneuvering capability made it a significantly more demanding SM-3 intercept problem than a conventional ballistic warhead. 24 SM-3 launches in the first salvo. The Roosevelt's escort screen was at full magazine capacity. The 6-week elevated alert posture had included a resupply evolution 12 days earlier. 16 SM-3 intercepts confirmed. 8 DF-21D warheads survived the mid-course engagement layer. SM-6 from all 3 destroyers, and the cruiser engaged the surviving 8 in terminal phase. 5 SM-6 intercepts. 3 DF-21D warheads reached CRAM engagement range. 2 were intercepted by CRAM at ranges between 6 and 9 kilometers. 1 DF-21D warhead reached the carrier's CIWS engagement zone at 2:43 a.m. CIWS engaged at 1.4 kilometers. The warhead was neutralized at 0.9 kilometers. Fragments from the detonation impacted the carrier's forward flight deck. 2 personnel on the forward deck sustained minor injuries. Flight operations continued without interruption. The carrier was not damaged structurally. Simultaneously, the Guam engagement was running at its own pace. 19 DF-26B missiles targeting Andersen Air Force Base had a flight time of approximately 22 minutes from Guangdong Province. The THAAD battery at Andersen, at full ready load after a resupply evolution 8 days earlier, was the primary defense. 3 SM-3 Block 2A launches from a ballistic missile defense destroyer positioned north of Guam achieved 2 mid-course intercepts. 14 DF-26B warheads entered the THAAD engagement envelope. THAAD engaged. 11 intercepts. 3 DF-26B warheads reached PAC 3 MSE range. 2 were intercepted. 1 impacted the eastern taxiway apron at Anderson at 2:55 a.m., creating a crater 12 meters in diameter. The taxiway was assessed as non-critical to flight operations. The primary runway remained operational throughout. B-52H bombers on ground alert at Anderson had been airborne since 2:20 a.m., 13 minutes before the DF-26B launches, as part of the elevated alert protocol that the DIA traffic pattern analysis had prompted 6 weeks earlier. In the Persian Gulf and Arabian Sea, the IRGC engagement was running across 3 simultaneous threads. The 61 Imad and Shahab, 3 missiles targeting Al-Udeid and Al-Dhafra, were engaged by the same layered defensive architecture that had been exercised in previous Gulf scenarios. SM-3 from Aegis destroyers in the Gulf, THAAD at both base locations, and PAC-3MSE at the terminal phase. The IRGC had not coordinated this strike package differently from its standard doctrine. What was different was the simultaneous nature of the Philippine Sea engagement. U.S. Space Command's satellite monitoring was processing 192 tracks across 2 theaters. CENTCOM and INDOPACOM command centers were operating simultaneously, and the pre-authorized protocols were executing in parallel on different continents. The human workload across the command architecture was at a level that had never been operationally tested. It was being tested now. The CAOC at Al-Udeid had received the CENTCOM alert at 2:34 a.m. and was simultaneously managing the Gulf Theater's defensive engagement while receiving status updates from INDOPACOM on the Pacific Theater engagement. The Combined Air Operations Center's primary display showed 2 simultaneous mass engagement events, one in the Philippine Sea, one in the Persian Gulf and Arabian Sea. The senior duty officer in the CAOC had been in his role for 14 months. He had exercised a simultaneous 2-theater scenario twice in that time, both in simulation. He managed both threads on his display without dividing his staff between them. The system had been designed to operate this way. The design was being validated in real time. 54 of 61 Imad and Shahab 3 missiles were intercepted across the layered Gulf defense. 7 reached terminal phase. 4 were intercepted by PAC-3MSE. 3 impacted in the Gulf theater, 1 on the Al-Dhafra vehicle staging area, 1 on the Al-Udeid outer taxiway, 1 in open ground adjacent to a Kuwait U.S. facility. 1 U.S. ground crew member at Al-Dhafra was injured by secondary debris from the vehicle staging area impact. Minor injury. Returned to duty within 3 hours. The 44 Fateh 313 missiles targeting U.S. facilities in Kuwait and northern Saudi Arabia were engaged by PAC-3MSE batteries at those installations. 39 intercepted. 5 reached terminal phase and impacted within or near base perimeters. 2 in Kuwait, 2 in Saudi Arabia's northern military zone, 1 in open ground outside a facility boundary. No personnel injuries from these impacts. Engineering teams cleared all 5 impact sites within the operational period. The 31 Hoveyzeh cruise missiles targeting the Truman carrier group in the Arabian Sea were the Gulf theater's most demanding engagement. The Truman's defensive architecture was complete. Full SM-6 magazine, CRAM operational, carrier air wing on elevated alert with aircraft airborne since 2:15 a.m. 24 Hoveyzeh missiles intercepted by SM-6 and carrier air wing FA-18F aircraft before reaching the group's inner defensive zone. 7 reached close range. 5 were intercepted by CRAM. 2 reached CIWS engagement range, both intercepted. The Truman Group sustained no damage and no personnel injuries. By 3:01 a.m., 28 minutes after the first PLA launch, both theaters had addressed their initial salvo. Combined results: of 192 weapons launched across 2 theaters, 178 intercepted. 14 achieved some form of effect distributed across both theaters. The Joint Planning Cell's force distribution strategy had worked in the sense that both carrier groups had been simultaneously engaged, and neither could reinforce the other. It had not worked in the sense that both groups remained combat effective. Both theaters remained under U.S. operational control. Neither carrier had been struck by a warhead. Neither base had been rendered non-operational. The effect achieved across 192 weapons and 2 coordinated national militaries, 1 cracked taxiway at Anderson, 1 vehicle staging area crater at Al-Dhafra, 1 taxiway impact at Al-Udeid, 5 near-perimeter impacts in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, 1 carrier forward deck fragment impact, and 4 personnel with minor injuries all returned to duty. The dual blade had not cut what its planners had intended. The counter-operations activating simultaneously in both theaters represented the largest coordinated U.S. offensive response since the early days of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Iron Pacific's counterstrike package targeted PLA rocket force infrastructure in Fujian and Guangdong provinces, DF-21, D-mobile launcher support facilities, reload storage, radar and command infrastructure, and the satellite ground stations providing targeting data for the anti-ship missiles. Iron Gulf's counterstrike package targeted IRGC Aerospace Force launch infrastructure across 3 provinces, the Coastal Missile Battery Network, and the Hoveyzeh staging areas in Fars Province. The operational complexity of simultaneously managing 2 independent counterstrike operations across 2 theaters was unprecedented in the post-Cold War era. CENTCOM and INDOPACOM were executing parallel strike packages, coordinating parallel Growler jamming operations, and managing parallel U.S. cybercom operations against 2 adversary command networks. The assets available to each theater were their own. No cross-theater transfer was operationally feasible, given the distances involved. But the command architecture at the top, INDOPACOM, CENTCOM, Joint Chiefs, was processing 2 simultaneous major combat operations and doing so through a command structure that had been designed and exercised for exactly this scenario following the DIA assessment 6 weeks earlier. B-1B Lancers from Anderson and Diego Garcia executed the Iron Pacific strike package against Fujian and Guangdong. DF-21D infrastructure beginning at 3:19 a.m. 108 JASSM-ER missiles across 27 aim points covering DF-21D mobile launcher support facilities, reload storage, and command relay infrastructure. Simultaneously, B-1B Lancers from Al-Udeid executed the Iron Gulf strike package against IRGC launch infrastructure in Kermanshah and Khuzestan provinces beginning at 3:21 a.m. 96 JASSM-ER missiles across 22 aim points. 2 independent JASSM-ER strikes executing within 2 minutes of each other against targets on opposite sides of the planet. By minute 52 from first launch, U.S. munitions expenditure had reached $1.94 billion across both theaters combined. $892 million in defensive interceptors in the Pacific Theater, $634 million in defensive interceptors in the Gulf Theater, and $416 million in JASSM-ER offensive ordnance across both strike packages. The invoice for a 2-theater coordinated response was larger than any single theater operation in the series. The exchange ratio remained favorable. Combined PLA and IRGC military infrastructure replacement value assessed lost across both theaters was estimated at $9.8 to $13.2 billion, producing an exchange ratio of approximately 1 to 5.8 to 1 to 6.8. The desperation contingency emerged at 3:14 a.m. in the Gulf Theater. An IRGC reserve battery in Lorestan Province, not part of the original dual-blade launch package, began preparation at 3:14 a.m. after its commander received a fragmentary message indicating the primary strike had not achieved its objectives. RQ-170 Sentinel surveillance detected the activation at 3:16 a.m. The Iron Gulf Targeting Coordinator designated it immediate priority at 3:17 a.m. 6 JASSM-ER missiles retasked from lower priority secondary targets via data link. 4 successfully received updated coordinates. The 4 JASSM-ERs reached the Loristan battery at 3:31 a.m. The launchers were at 17 minutes into their preparation cycle. They did not complete it. No comparable reserve contingency materialized in the Pacific Theater. The PLA Rocket Forces command network in Fujian Province went below coordinated operational threshold at 3:44 a.m. as U.S. cybercom operations against its command links and JASSM-ER impacts on its command relay infrastructure accumulated to the degradation point that the system's own monitoring tools had been pre-calibrated to identify. The PLA's Southern Theater Command attempted to reconstitute communication with surviving mobile launcher battalions at 3:47 a.m. The message reached 3 of 7 battalion command posts. 4 had lost communication with Theater Command entirely. The surviving 3 battalions reported their status and awaited orders that arrived too slowly and too fragmentarily to constitute actionable guidance. At 4:01 a.m., 88 minutes after the first DF-21D launch, both theaters had completed their primary counterstrike phases. The Roosevelt Carrier Group remained at full combat tempo in the Philippine Sea, its forward deck fragment damage assessed as superficial, its air-wing cycling strike aircraft at standard interval. The Truman Carrier Group remained at full combat tempo in the Arabian Sea, unscathed. Andersen Air Force Base had a cracked taxiway apron and an operational primary runway. Al Udeid and Al Dhafra had pavement impacts and operational runways. Every U.S. installation that had been targeted was operational. Both carrier groups were operational. 4 U.S. personnel had sustained minor injuries and returned to duty. Time from first launch to final. U.S. offensive weapon impact across both theaters, 88 minutes. Iron Pacific aim points engaged, 27. Confirmed neutralized, 23 of 27. Iron Gulf aim points engaged, 22. Confirmed neutralized, 19 of 22. The Joint Planning Cell's dual-blade concept had achieved its geometric objective. 2 carrier groups had been simultaneously engaged, and neither could reinforce the other. The magazine split had worked as designed. What the concept had not modeled with sufficient fidelity was the depth of each theater's magazine, independent of cross-theater reinforcement. The Roosevelt Group's full SM-3 capacity at full magazine, achieved through a resupply evolution 12 days earlier, had been sufficient to address 37 DF-21D missiles with capacity remaining for SM-6 and CRAM engagement of survivors. The Truman Group's full defensive magazine had been sufficient to address 31 Hoveyzeh cruise missiles without expending its capacity. The force distribution strategy had split a defensive network that was deep enough to handle the split. The 2 blades of dual blade had encountered defensive architectures that were not dependent on cross-theater reinforcement to function. They had been designed not to be. 88 minutes. 192 weapons, 2 theaters, 6,800 miles of separation. The most operationally complex coordinated adversary strike attempt in the post-Cold War era had produced 4 personnel with minor injuries and 3 pavement craters. The Joint Planning Cell had correctly identified the one structural vulnerability in U.S. Pacific Gulf force posture that could theoretically be exploited: the 2 carrier force distribution. It had built a 4-month operation to exploit it. The DIA traffic pattern analysis had identified the planning 6 weeks before it executed. The elevated alert posture had positioned resupply evolutions and pre-positioned alerts. The structural vulnerability the Joint Planning Cell had found was real. It had been closed before Dual Blade launched. The blade had found the armor, not the gap.